What's up, everyone? Welcome to another week of What You're Missing. I'm Sisyphus, and if this is your first time, welcome. We are about to talk about some of the news from last week in the gaming industry that jumped out at me. And without further ado, we shall do just that. All right, so um, those of you who know me and who have been reading and following along with what I've been doing, you know that I like massively multiplayer online games. And you may also know, if you know me better than some, that I kind of like Warhammer 40K. I don't know very much about it, but I've played a lot of the games that have been released over the years, and I like what I know, what little there is of it. So they're creating a Warhammer 40K MMO called Eternal Crusade, or it's Warhammer 40K Eternal Crusade. And I read this article about how they're going to handle the fact that Space Marines are typically a limited in number group of heroes, shall we say. Let's just call them heroes, because for lack of a better word. But that generally, like when they engage in war with the orcs, they are outnumbered by 2, 3, 4, or 5 times as many orcs. And so when you're creating a game where players are allowed to play other factions, such as the orcs or the Eldar, I think they're called, or the Chaos Marines, or any of these others, um, you're you're sort of faced with a challenge where that same numeric standard that you're used to from all of the books and the games in the past, where wave after wave of orc would challenge and attack a small team of space marines. You have a hard time duplicating that in an MMO because, you know, I think the study they did among just their own group and their people that they knew was that 40% of people wanted to play as Space Marine. So that doesn't make you a small elite squad. That makes you a severely dominant force in the universe that you've created, right? Because if you've got 4 or 5 different factions, and I think it's 4, and one of them is 40% of your player base, and that's just, obviously not a statistically valid number, but just to use it as a discussion point. If you're going with 40% of your people are this one, elite squad, that's like saying 40% of the army, or at least that basically the U.S. Army is completely made up of Green Berets or Navy SEALs or whatever elite squad you like, and that 40% of the world's armed forces are all Green Berets. I mean, it just, it doesn't make sense. So they've come up with ways that they're going to try to combat this. And so I've got a quote I'm going to read to you, but basically they're attempting to use the free-to-play model to help them, I guess, to help them create the universe that they originally need to make it accurate, right? So they're saying that they want the game to cost about $40, and that'll give the person free reign to play as who they wish and to do what they please, right? So and then there's probably a subscription model on top of the free to play, which allows people to, I think, continue in that vein. Now, if you want to pre-order and you want to spend not $40 but only $15, you are able to do that. But all it does is it gives you access to a single character slot, and it forces you to play as an orc. Now, so I might have explained this poorly. So the $40 gets you the entire game and lets you play as whoever you like, as long as you're a paying subscriber. If you would like to play free to play and you don't want to spend very much money on this game at all, you can pre-order, you can buy the game itself for $15, but you're going to be forced to play as an orc. And more specifically, you're going to be forced to play as like a grunt in the orc army. And so people who they think that because the bar will be set low, and basic economics tells you that this is the case, that a lot more people are going to be willing to try the game, play the game. If you only had to pay $15 for a full MMO and then you didn't have to pay a subscription or anything else, you might be willing to do that if you thought it was a good game and you just had budgetary constraints. That's the rice. I'm cooking dinner, so um, I'll wait for it to stop beeping because All right. Um, yeah, so basically you're gonna have not Zerg, but you're gonna have these a whole large number of people playing as orcs that are gonna fill out this population. And so their reasoning is that the people who pay the subscription will be one of the more sought after races, right? So they're going to be the Eldar, they're going to be the Space Marines or the Chaos Marines, and in doing so, that will limit the number of people that are in each of those. So they will maintain their elite status of sorts. Now, part of my problem with this is that it associates money with an elite status within a game, which is almost always going to spell doom and destruction for that game, because nobody likes to have pay to play, or nobody likes to feel as though the people who have money and are willing to spend more money on the game have an advantage in the game. And so I would guess they're fully aware that this is going to be a problem, and they're probably coming up with ways to combat that. But as it stands right now and the way they talk about it, yeah, it just seems like there's, I don't know, it seems like there's going to be some problems. But so the subscription fee for people who still want to play as orcs as their main faction allows them to do that, but they're not a grunt. They would be like a troop commander, or they'd have a higher rank. They'd be a leader in the orc army. I'm not sure what that translates to as far as gameplay and the difference that you would see between a grunt or a boys grunt and, you know, an orc leader. I don't know. But here's the quote. So they say, Karen hopes that by and that's Caron. I think it's a guy. Odds are real good it's a guy because it's in the game industry, unfortunately. Hopes that, and that's his last name. Karen hopes that by leveraging the 40K lore, his free-to-play concept will take care of many of the customer service issues as well. Here's the quote. If a premium player called customer support once the game is live and says, you know, I have 5 boys, these are these orc grunts, you know, I have 5 boys ganking my spawn point, and I have an issue with that. Can you advise them, please? My customer support rep is going to say, sir, it's because they're boys. They're just doing what boys do. Talk to your other Space Marines and have them remove the boys from your spawn point. That's how they are. So, again, as somebody who's played a lot of MMOs, and especially some MMOs that are free-to-play or have a free-to-play component to them, that really opens the door and opens the game up for a bad culture of ganking and bad or ungentlemanly behavior, or just, it's, you know, like sort of uncivilized play, and that's not conducive to a long lifespan or a good gaming experience for, especially for the people who are actually your paying customers. So yeah, so you know, I'm excited for the game to see what comes and what happens with it, but I'm wary. Those of you who've been following Gamergate probably saw that Anita Sarkeesian showed up on the Colbert Report this week, and there was a nice stint where they talked to each other, and now national news has been picking up what's been going on, and hopefully it won't come to an end, I don't think, ever, but, you know, because misogyny will probably never end, sadly, but I think it got some much needed attention by going on at least the Colbert Report, and, you know, showing up in the New York Times and in People and some of these other magazines. So I think it's good, and we're making at least some progress. It was pretty succinct, so over just a few minutes we got to hear what Ms. Sarkeesian has to say, and Colbert did his thing. And so the finishing little back and forth that I thought was really interesting went like this. Colbert asks, as a man, am I allowed to be a feminist? And her response is, do you believe that women should have equal rights to men and that we should fight for those rights? Sure. Great. Then you're a feminist. For all of you men out there, you can be feminists. Women who don't like the idea of feminism because you think it's man-hating, it's really not. This is what it is. Equal rights and treatment for women. So you too can be a feminist without all of the negative connotation. And if you don't know what the word connotation means, you can look it up. Dictionary is a great thing. We got the internet. It's all right there. The PlayStation 4 2.00 update landed last week and has been causing problems for people since then. The PlayStation has a standby mode, which allowed it to download updates in the background while you were off living your life. And it also allowed you to charge your controllers and or headsets as long as they were connected while it was in standby mode. So I'm telling you about this because they renamed in 2.0, they renamed standby mode to rest mode. But in some change that they made to the system in that update, made if you go to rest mode, either voluntarily or because you left your PlayStation on for too long and it put itself into rest mode, it might not turn back on, and it might corrupt some system files if or when it does. And then it would need to boot into safe mode and download files from the internet and try to restore itself, and bad things happen. So don't wander away from your PS4 when it's on. Don't put it into rest mode, and you should be okay. I think it's also causing problems with some games. I think it has had some issues with Destiny, because that's really all I'm playing. And NBA 2K15, which has been having its own set of problems, was trying to blame some of them on the PlayStation as well, so who knows whether they're related. The update also introduced YouTube sharing functionality, although the update, it's not working as intended, and there's some problems there too. So hopefully Sony will get their act together and they will fix everything, and we can all go back to what we were doing originally. All right. Two last items. One is kind of quirky and disappointing for mankind, and the other is interesting and disappointing for me personally, just because of my history with it. But I guess we'll end with mankind, and then we'll start with my own personal frustrations. But so Twitch has created a category to allow people to stream game development live, like the process of people creating sprites or any other part of the game development process can now be streamed and watched live on Twitch. And I think that's really cool. And it goes along the lines of some of the things that I've been talking about for months since we started, which is this idea of shared creativity, and that people can stream, or should be able to stream, their creative process, whether that's in making games, in the artwork behind those games, fan fiction and fan art. I don't know, there's just a whole lot, like 3D printing, all kinds of stuff. There's all sorts of different ways that this could be, or this could exist in the video game industry, and it's really cool to see that it's taken the next step and that Twitch has embraced that. So that's awesome. I won't tell you why it frustrates the hell out of me, because that's not important to you, but there you have it. Last up, if you've been living under a rock, you don't know this, but there's been an Ebola break in the world, and a lot of people are scared that they're going to get the plague, and a lot of people are dying from the plague. And so it's this big phenomenon that's been going on in the world. It's a tragedy, but the weird twist to that tragedy is that there's been a 50% uptick in sales of a game called Plague Incorporated, which simulates the spread of disease and plague in the world. So people are literally buying a ton more of this game to simulate the spread of disease. So there you have it. And that's all I've got for this week. Tune in tomorrow, and I will talk to you about Destiny and what I've learned this last week, and we will go from there. So thanks for watching. Hit subscribe. Just do it. It won't hurt you. It'll show up on, your YouTube page so that you can find me easily. And that's really what I want, and that's what you want too. You want to find me easily. So there you go. Hit subscribe. Hit the thumbs up button if you like what you hear, or if you just like me. And yeah, so that's all I got. I'll see you tomorrow.